Hello, it's Phil Thatch, and I am in downtown Chattanooga today. And today I have the honor of doing a photo walk with Chattanooga's most noted photo walker, David Saylors. We're on Main Street, which is, I don't know how many blocks it is from the river, but I think it's at least 15, maybe even 16 blocks. And our plan is to do all 16 blocks down to the river and back today. And I've got the Z8, and I'm using the 50mm 1.8S, and David has the ZF with the Viltrox 50mm f2, which he's testing. So, I'm not really a prime guy, but I'm trying to be as cool as David. But just in case, I've got my 24 to 120 in my backpack in case I need to run back to my security blanket. But anyway, we're excited, or I'm excited at least for sure, to be doing this, and we'll see how it goes. Talk to you soon.
See what we can find. Yeah.
This is going to be awesome. Well, we've made it down to, I don't know where we are.
We're at Martin and 13th.
We've made it down to 13th, so we made it 2 or 3 blocks. And I made a picture of a girl on a bicycle at 1.8 that hopefully I got in focus. And then I took a picture of this building right here, this cool looking building. And because I'm using the prime, I had to zoom with my feet. I left David all by himself and had to go back up about 1.5 blocks to get the whole building in the shot. But I think I got it. We're having fun. This is a good time. We're just a couple of camera guys talking about camera stuff. Well, here is the first picture of the photo walk with David, this gentleman who has got your back walking down the road there. This is 50mm. Everything's 50mm today with a prime lens, 1/1600th of a second. I shot this wide open at 1.8 and ISO 64. And here's the young lady on the bicycle that I mentioned in the video clip. This is 1/2000th, also wide open at 1.8 and ISO 64. The lens renders well, wide open at 1.8. Thought this turned out really nice, but sometimes I feel like maybe shooting wide open is not the way to go. I think I could still get nice separation at f4. So we'll look into that a little bit more as the day goes on. Here's another 1.8 shot, 1/2500th of a second of David, and we were just experimenting with this little alleyway, and I think he took a picture of me. I'm not sure, but I definitely got this picture of him. I took a picture of this interesting looking building, which has bright light on it from the right and kind of medium light on it in the middle. And it's in the shade over here on the left-hand side. I thought that was interesting. I wish I had more in the frame to the right here. There was something there that I didn't like, and I framed it this way for a reason, and now I can't remember what that is. I stopped this one down to f6.3. This is 1/500th and ISO 64. David's always interested in old architecture, and he was checking out how this doorway was made, and I took this shot of him. I thought he looked cool there. I wish I had framed it up, maybe stepped back a little bit further to where the rest of this South Side Salon and Spa sign was in the picture, but I think I was like almost in the road to get this shot. This place is in the National Register of Historic Places. This is f1.8, 1/800th of a second, and ISO 64. We had really nice light today. It was mostly overcast, but every once in a while some fairly bright light would shine through. And this is an f5 shot at 1/400th of a second and ISO 72. I cropped this to 16:7. It's a shot of Warehouse Row, and I like the way the light was shining on the Warehouse Row building. But if I just cropped it here or framed it up here, it looked weird. So I tried to frame it up where Warehouse Row, the sign, was in the middle of the frame, and I just let these trees be leading lines going down the road, and of course the road itself is leading lines. And I like the way Market Street, I think this is Market Street, curves right here, so you've got buildings in the background. It's just really cool. I like the way this shot turned out, and I hope you like it as well. Here's a couple of gentlemen crossing the street there near Warehouse Row, and I've got 2 shots in this sequence, and I think they go well together. In this first shot, it looks like the young man is struggling to keep up with the slightly older gentleman. And this is wide open at 1.8, 1/1250th and ISO 64. And in this next shot, they've gone a little bit further, and the young man has caught up and he is matching his stride. So I like both of these. They're both wide open at 1.8 and 1/1250th of a second and ISO 64. I think I like the background in this one better, but I like the way the people look in this shot better. But maybe the background's pretty cool in this shot with this Truist building way in the background. I don't know. I like them both. I hope you do too. Right now we're at, what is this? The historic U.S. courthouse, which is just really neat. Has all sorts of cool archways and rock work. We made a few shots of it. And I took a picture of the whole thing from across the street, which hopefully that shot will be okay. This is the historic United States courthouse that I told you about in the video clip. This is 1/400th of a second. I stopped it down to f4.5 and the ISO is 80 on this. And the next shot I'm going to show you, I was standing at the top of these stairs looking at the detail in this arch. So let's take a look at that. Here's the detail in the arch. This is f5.6, 1/400th of a second and 200 ISO. Just really pretty to look at up close. And every once in a while, if I remember correctly, there was a dirt dauber, which is kind of a wasp sort of a nest in this thing. And now I can't find it. Oh, there we go. There's some dirt dauber nests right there. Kind of cool, unless one of those flies out and stings you while you're going in or out of the courthouse. And this is the sign out front of the courthouse. I thought it was good to get this in here just so I could remember what it was. This is f5.6, 1/400th. Now this is Mountain Stove Company, which I thought was a cool old building, and I was kind of framing up my composition. I was holding the camera above my head so I could try to get my lines straight, and had it just about right. And right then, this nice lady came by with her 3 youngsters. She's got 1 youngster behind her, 1 youngster behind the stroller, and another youngster in the stroller. So she is busy. But I thought the Mountain City Stove Company looked cool. This is f7.1. I wanted to get a lot of the scene in focus, 1/400th of a second and ISO 125. Now, if you look at this part of the shot right here, this wall that has some cracking in it, that's also in the next shot. And here you can see the cracking on that wall. This is where Mountain City Stove Company continues. On this one, it doesn't say Mountain City Stove Company anymore. It says Mal I Co. This one is f1.8. I had opened it back up and then I decided I needed to take a shot of this building, but even at f1.8, it still looks fantastic. Almost as good as it would if it was stopped down. This is 1/2500th of a second and ISO 64. Here's several buildings in Chattanooga, and to get this shot at 50 millimeters, I had to crop it quite a bit. There's another shot that kind of reminds me of this shot in this video, but in order to make that shot, I had to stitch a panorama. This one is 1.8, probably would have been better at f4 or 5.6. This is 1/4000th of a second and ISO 64. I like the colors in this, and man, we had just beautiful light, even when it wasn't bright. But look at those colors. This is another building in downtown Chattanooga that has a mural painted all the way around it. It's really, really beautiful. And I guess that's an AT&T logo. This is f16. I meant to stop it down some, but I stopped it down too much. Should have paid more attention. 1/400th of a second and ISO 800. I'm sure I meant for this to be f8, but for some reason I spun the aperture knob all the way to f16. And now here's a photograph of David while he's making a photograph. This is f6.3, 1/400th and ISO 360. I think he enjoyed shooting with the Viltrox 50mm f2 today. I sat down and made this photograph of these 2 gentlemen walking towards me, and there's another gentleman framed up by them in the background, which I thought that was really cool. I had to crop this one a fairly good amount to get the composition to look like this, but that's the good thing about the Nikon Z8 and its 45 megapixels. Even though this is pretty heavily cropped, there's still plenty of resolution. This is 1/400th f6.3 and ISO 450. Well, I haven't made enough updates to keep track of where we are, but I think the last thing that we photographed was the EPB building. So let's look at a bunch of stuff leading up to the EPB building shot. We are now at the intersection of ML King, which we made a lot of shots on ML King. Here's another shot where I probably could have had the aperture at a different place than I ended up actually having it. This is f1.8 of the EPB, or electric power board building. And I wish I had shot this at f4 or f5.6. But the Z 50mm 1.8 still looks great. even wide open. And speaking of wide open, I was wide open for this shot. This gentleman wasn't paying attention to me at all, but I did get some eye contact from his dog. This is 1/1000th of a second, f1.8 and ISO 64. And this building back here in the background is where Heather and I got married. Now, this is the area where I normally do my street photography. We're at the intersection of 8th Street and Market Street, and most of my street photography is done right around this intersection. Of course, David and I walked several blocks, but one of the places we passed was this location. And I got a photograph of this person on their Harley Davidson at f1.8, 1/800th of a second, and ISO 64. David and I both were fascinated watching this truck with a crane on it lifting these huge packages of drywall board, which is very, very heavy. And David and I weren't the only people captivated. You can see this person is watching intently, so is this one, and so is this one. This one back here doesn't seem to be paying as much attention. This is 1.8, 1/1250th of a second, and ISO 64. Another shot that I probably could have shot at f4 or f5.6. But I really don't see any problems with it at 1.8. What an amazing lens that 50mm 1.8S from Nikon is. There's a statue right there on, I think, Market Street, and every once in a while I take a picture of it, including today. This part of the statue is, I don't know, it's an angel and a demon. I'm not sure what it is. David made a really interesting shot that has both of these looking up at the head of the part of the statue that's holding them. My shot is at f2.8, 1/400th of a second, and ISO 500. And you'll have to watch David's video to see his shot. He had a creative Dutch angle going on with it. And then I made this shot that shows the entire statue. And this is just right on the side of the road. And this is 1/400th f2.8, ISO 560. Here's a photograph I call David on the stairs. I asked him if he didn't mind going up there and posing for just a moment, and he said he would be happy to. This is 1/400th of a second, f2.8, and ISO 160. He looks pretty cool on the stairs with his Nikon Z8. We stopped and had some really good Mexican food, and now we're going to get back at it. Then we stopped and got some lunch, and I made a photograph of his Nikon Z8 camera with that really nice looking strap he uses, and the Viltrox 50mm f2 lens, which he used that day. This is f2.8. I did another version at 1.8, and the 2.8 looked much better. I wanted the camera to not be completely in focus, and I do have that with this shot, but at f1.8, there wasn't enough of it in focus. So I used the 2.8 shot, and I slowed my shutter speed all the way down to 1/60th of a second, and this is ISO 1400. Now we're done eating, and we're back out prowling around taking photographs, and this is where David stands when he makes his photograph of a hotel they're building in Chattanooga, and he's documenting it with his vlogging camera. And I made this 1.8 photograph of him at 1/1600th of a second and ISO 64. And at 1.8, you can see David is nice and sharp, but the background is pleasingly out of focus. I thought this particular shot at 1.8 really turned out nice. And you can see we're in the center of Broad Street, where cars on the right are going one direction and cars on the left are parked, but right beside the parked cars, there's cars going down the road. And I made this shot of a guy who was there on Broad Street. I'm in the middle of Broad Street, and I barely got his entire car in the shot. There's actually one shot before this where he was giving me a thumbs up, but I cut the back of the car off in that shot. So he's still smiling in this shot. This is f1.8, 1/3200th of a second, and ISO 64 in nice looking Mercedes convertible. Well, we turned around at 4th Street, and it wasn't because we were tired or lazy. It's just because our parking is going to run out. So we decided to head on back, but we didn't make it all the way down to the water. But we were 4 blocks from it. And as we were making our way back, there was a gentleman jogging, and I just kind of put my camera in his general direction at my waist and fired at f1.8, and I think I got a shot of him in focus. Let's take a look and see. And this is the photograph that I mentioned in the video clip there where I caught this jogger at 1.8. This is 1/5000th of a second in ISO 64. I was shooting aperture priority, and I had the camera set to not let the shutter speed go down below 1/400th of a second. And he was very backlit, so I had to pull the shadows a lot in this shot. But I still think it turned out okay, just not as good as I thought it had when I was out in the field. There's a company that does carriage rides in Chattanooga, and usually you get on these carriages down in front of the Tennessee Aquarium on 2nd Street. And this is the first time I've ever seen the place where they keep the carriages. You can see in the garage over here, there's a couple of carriages. And I was framing up a shot of this carriage that was parked outside. And just as I was framing it up, this gentleman came walking into the frame. So I definitely like the shot of the carriage with this gentleman. Makes it a little bit more interesting. This is f4, 1/400th of a second, and ISO 90. Here's a shot where I got down low and photographed these two gentlemen as they were walking. I wish their angle was slightly more towards me. And I do like that they're walking and almost mimicking the way the walk sign looks. So that's kind of cool, but this picture was just okay. I think David got a better version of it. We kind of both worked on this shot at the same time, and I think David's is better. This is f4, 1/1250th, and ISO 64. Now this walking shot is one that I'm much more happy with. She's actually turning this corner. She had been walking this way, and now she's going to be walking towards me. So that's why she's leaning like she is. And I love these lights. Even though it's the middle of the day, you can still see that these lights are on. So I really like the way that turned out. This is 1/1000th of a second f4 and ISO 64. And this shot at f4, the background is still plenty out of focus to make me happy. You would think I would have to shoot at f1.8 to have the background out of focus like this, but it was out of focus at f4. So what I'm trying to say is I haven't figured out what aperture I should use for these street photography photos. I don't know if I need to shoot wide open or if f4 will give me the effect that I want. It certainly did in this shot. Here's another shot at f4. You know, I love to make photographs looking up 8th Street with the dome building in the background. And I framed this up and this couple walked across, and I made this shot at 1/400th f4 and ISO 64. Love that dome building and the way it looks as you look up 8th Street. So now we've come up on the roof of the City Park garage and taken a couple of pictures. David's making a picture of, he may be making a pano. I'm not sure what he's making.
Public building.
Oh, there's the Tivoli over there. It's just all sorts of cool stuff can be seen from this rooftop. And this is a shot from the top of the City Park parking garage with Lookout Mountain and the amazing clouds that we had. It was such a beautiful light day. And this is f4, 1/2000th of a second, and ISO 64. Here's a shot looking down the side of the parking garage with our shadows. That's David on the left with the cowboy hat and me without a hat on the right. And I did this one black and white just for you, Tim Childers. This is f4, 1/1000th of a second, and ISO 64. And I've made a shot like this a couple of times. This is a stitched panorama because at 50 millimeters, I couldn't get the whole scene in, but I thought the light on all these buildings was really nice. And I loved the way the clouds looked in the background. But there's one church, there's two churches, three churches, I think another church over here maybe, or maybe that's part of this church. And I like the building that's in the foreground. The roof of it has these, I think, former chimneys. A lot of interesting brickwork in this. This is 1/2500th of a second f4 and ISO 64. And I think I made 5 or 6 shots to stitch together in this panorama from the roof of the garage. Now we're back down on street level, and I caught this gentleman riding by. I thought it was just interesting as can be. He's on one of the Chattanooga bicycles, and the ones that are light green like this are electric assist. And he's wearing a full suit with nice shoes, and he's got an Amazon box just kind of stuck up on there. It doesn't even look like it's tied on. So I wonder if he took the bicycle just so it would make it easier to carry this Amazon box. I'm not sure, but I love the way he's rule of thirds in this shot, and he's passing these beautiful Japanese maples, and he's kind of rule of thirds on them as well. So this is f4, 1/500th of a second, and ISO 64. And then we were continuing to walk back to our cars, and I was walking along and I looked around and where in the world is David? Oh, David's making a picture. So I turned around and made a picture of him while he was making a picture. This is f4, 1/1250th of a second, and ISO 64. All right, we've walked all over the place. Kind of like this right here. And then like this right here. And
That whole tracking thing's weird.
playing with the Pocket 3 just to see how it works. But I think I've got it set up where I should be on this side of it because it's following me. But anyway, it's been a lot of fun. I've so much enjoyed hanging out with you today.
Great, though.
It's been
Y'all on lunch.
yeah. Well, we got lunch. I ate lunch. David was not allowed to eat. That's how it went. But anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. If you did, hit thumbs up. We're going to try to launch these videos on the same day, so you should be able to click right onto David's video at the end and get your camera out and take a picture, is what my good buddy David would say. And
No matter what kind it is.
yeah, even if it's a Sony.
I don't know about that.
Thanks for watching, y'all. Bye-bye.